Today on the podcast, we have Ameer from the Dental Build. He is one of the most knowledgeable people I know in regards to absolutely everything there is to do with the ground up build of a practice. I have firsthand knowledge of him saving folks hundreds of thousands of dollars just based on his knowledge. It was a privilege to be in the car with Ameer for the day as we explored the world of the practice build. This was just the beginning of our conversation for the day. I hope you enjoy listening. I learned a ton from this guy, and I look forward to working with him more in the future.
He asks me all the time, will you have pictures of some of the projects you've done? I'm like, yeah, I can show you pictures of some of the things that we've built, but you might not like them.
Right.
That shouldn't reflect on me because I didn't design them. But everybody's got their own taste. There are some offices that I've built that I don't like, but the client likes them.
Yeah.
A lot of it also unfortunately comes down to budget too, right? Like that spa, for example, that was a very, very low budget build. That was a very difficult build in the sense that the location was hard, but also the budget was hard because there wasn't a lot to be able to, get everything that she wanted into there. And we fit a lot into such a small space.
Right.
Like, it's crazy.
So what would you recommend to somebody with like a tight budget then? What's the most crucial thing for somebody like that?
The biggest thing is when you find a space, you need to have a qualified contractor view it as well, to look for things like power, HVAC, water supply, sewer, sanitary. Make sure that all of these base building items are installed by the developer or the previous tenant, because those are things that should be there in order for us to do our tenant improvement. If they're not, then those are just extra expenses over and above a typical build. So those are things that sometimes the client won't be aware is missing from the space, and they're going to have to pay for it in the end. So, like example, this place didn't have an electrical panel. We had to run an entire new feed. So depending on how far away you are from the main electrical room in the parkade, that could be $30,000, no problem. And that's just an expense that the client had no idea that they were going to incur. So it's really important to, before you sign that lease, before you purchase a space, is to have someone come through and take a look at it and ensure that all those things are in place, and there's not going to be any unexpected expenses that are over and above a typical build.
Right. So a good time to get in touch with somebody like you to get in there and who really knows what to look for.
Yeah, so like we offer a service, it's complimentary. When you're looking for a space, or you have a space in mind, or you find a space, just give us a call and I'll go there and I'll take a look at everything for you and give you my opinion, and I'll let you know if there's anything that space needs or anything extra that we should be aware of down the road. In dental specifically, there's a lot of things that we have to be aware of, especially when it comes to the different types of construction. So we have two types of construction. One's a suspended slab. So that's a concrete slab that's floating. It's typically 10 inches thick, and that would separate between floors of a building or between a parkade and a retail unit. Then there's another slab which is called slab on grade. So literally right below the concrete there's dirt. It's about a 10-inch slab, and then there's dirt or gravel. when you encounter slab on grade, like this project we're going to now, it adds quite a bit of expense because we have to trench everything. We have to cut out a 2-foot trench throughout the entire place and remove all of that concrete, excavate, install all of our services, backfill, put reinforcing steel in between the slabs, and then pour concrete and level that off with the existing slab. So versus just drilling holes through a suspended slab and bringing all your services up. So there's a lot of little things that we can help when we go to site, and we can determine if it's feasible for one. Sometimes a suspended slab might be too thick to core through. There might be slab bands. There might be too many obstacles or structural steel that's in the way. There could be post-tension cables in the building that we need to be aware of, and there's just a lot of little things that we look for that aren't typically on the client's radar when they're going to look at a space. They're more concerned about the location and the building and what it's going to look like for their clients to come or their patients to come there, parking. They're not typically concerned about how hard it is going to be to actually build in that space.
Have you ever had to tell anybody that it's just not possible to put a practice in here?
Oh yeah. I would say 90% of the time we will find a way to make it work. There are ways to get the services to the equipment, like dental air and vacuum. That's possible. We do have techniques and abilities to do that without coring through the slab or cutting a trench in the slab. But when it comes to sanitary, so sewer drains for sinks or toilets, that's where we become extremely restricted on where those can go.
Just the guidelines in place, bylaws, or?
Well, no, the plumbing code, you have to be a certain distance away from a main drain for venting and for the sink placements. So if you can't core in certain areas of the building, then you can't put a sink there. So when it comes to dental air and vacuum, we can run it surface through like a architectural bulkhead or through some sort of a millwork bulkhead. We can hide all those, but now you're going to have an umbilical cord that goes from this bulkhead to the toe of the chair junction box. But there have definitely been scenarios where I've told clients to walk away from a space. It's just, it could work. I mean, everything is possible. It really just comes down to how much can you spend, right? Like, there's usually an option, but a lot of the time the budget really determines how far a client wants to go with that build.
What's the first place a potential, somebody interested in building a new clinic? Where's the best place to look for spaces? What do you recommend?
Well, definitely talk to a realtor who understands the demographic of the area that you're trying to target for your patients or for your clients.
Is there a particular realtor that deals in this kind of commercial space? Is that a good start?
Yeah, for sure. A lot of commercial realtors. There are actually realtors who specifically focus on dental as well, or medical practices. and they work with dentists and doctors, and they find locations for them that are suitable to their needs. A lot of the time we're looking for like street level or ground level access, especially since COVID. You see a lot of people trying to get away from elevators. Elevator access has become a little bit more difficult, especially when we had all the mandates in place and you could only have two people per elevator. The lineups became really big in the lobbies of these buildings, and it just took a long time for patients to get up there. Another thing we're looking at a lot now is the usable square footage as well. We're seeing a lot of reception areas become smaller, and that's kind of due to COVID as well. You're not having a lot of people sitting in the reception area waiting for their treatments. They might be in their cars and they'll receive a text or something, and they'll be called to the clinic shortly before they're ready to go actually into their treatment. So
kind of more ideal situation anyways.
Well, for sure. I mean, you look at the cost of purchasing or leasing a space these days, every square foot counts, especially in a dental office. If we can squeeze one more operatory in to make revenue generating square footage, then that's what we'll try to do. But
I like that. Revenue generating square footage.
Yeah, so revenue generating square footage is, basically any square footage in the building that's making you money. Your staff room's not making you money. Your reception area is not making you money. It's nice to make it pleasant and welcoming to the patients, because you might get some walk-ins who think right away like, this place is amazing, or it's beautiful, and this is where I want to have my treatments done. It's just great. However, the physical size of it isn't making you any money.
Right.
You're making the money in the operatories, and that's where we try to fit as many as we can into a space.
So I mean, if you can squeeze out another hygiene operatory and cut 5 chairs out of your waiting room, that's a more ideal situation to be in, especially, I imagine being somewhere like downtown Vancouver, where space comes at a very high premium.
For sure. And a lot of these buildings now have their own lobbies, like elevator lobbies on the main floor that might have big waiting areas for the building in general use. So you can actually utilize that building's lobby with their seating in there to have your patients maybe wait before they come to your practice and sit in your waiting room.
Which kind of like it lessens the noise. It takes maybe some of the anxiety out.
Yeah.
What about is it a good situation to get in before the building's even being built and work with the teams that are building the actual building and facilities to like add the pieces in that you need as a dental clinic or a medical clinic?
So we've done that before. Unfortunately, when you're trying to work with a building especially of like multiple floors, they may have already submitted for their building permits, so they would have to submit for a revision, especially if they're altering the plumbing or electrical to suit a tenant's needs or a potential future owner. So typically the developers and the builders of the base building would want the tenant or the owner to apply for their own building permit and just take care of everything themselves. In scenarios where you cannot cut open the slab because they're a structural slab, and you can't cut them, you can't drill them, you can't alter them, and they haven't been poured yet, we have worked with the developer and they've allowed us to install our services in that slab before they poured it. That was a pretty rare occasion, but typically we're going in and we're cutting open the concrete, or we're drilling holes everywhere.
Is there any factions or any group strata that would stop a particular, project like a dental practice from happening within a space? Like red tape?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, when we apply for a permit, there's typically the municipality will require what's called a strata letter of approval. We have to submit plans to that strata, and they review them and issue a letterhead stating that they have approved the space in their building for a dental practice. There's a lot of strata bylaws that you have to abide by, and that may be like a competition clause. If there's already a dental office in their building or part of that strata, they may not allow another dental office in that strata. If the building's post-tension cable, or they have any structural slabs that they don't want drilled or cut open, then they could not approve it. And without that letter of approval, we can't even submit for a building permit. So it's very important to try to get on board with the strata and find out if it's feasible or allowable in that building or space before you actually sign that dotted line. But a lot of stratas actually are pretty difficult to work with, and they won't even talk to someone who's not the registered owner of the space. So you may have to get the existing owner of the space to talk to the strata and get their approval before. So like if you were a tenant and you were going to lease it, or if you were going to purchase it off of someone, you'd have to get the old owner to talk to the strata.
So maybe another good first step is to really investigate, any bureaucracy, red tape that you might encounter, like a terrible strata company.
Oh yeah. Well, there's definitely 3 things that you need to look into when you're looking at a space. 1, have a contractor who understands what they're doing with dental. Come and view the space. Make sure it's feasible. Make sure that the holes can be cored or the slab can be cut where it's required to install all those dental services into the equipment locations. 2, talk to the strata to ensure that a dental practice is allowable in that space, and that they're going to allow you to core or cut the slab for your dental services and for your sewers, sinks and toilets. 3, make sure that the space is zoned for a dental office or a medical practice. A lot of the time you may think that it's zoned, but until you actually apply for permit and you submit your zoning inquiry, you don't know. So lots of municipalities actually have an zoning inquiry that you can fill out before you apply, and they'll send you a response typically within 5 to 10 business days.
Is there like a special type of zoning for just dental specific, being that there is special, water needs and pressured air needs and all of that stuff, like coring and all that?
Well, as far as zoning goes, every municipality has their own zoning bylaws, so that's kind of specific to each city or township. As far as like dental air and vacuum and all that stuff, those are typically installed in the practice and are self-contained within that building. So you're typically going to have your own air compressor or your own vacuum supplying your own compressed air and your own suction. But there are requirements for electrical, for example. We like to look for a minimum of 100 amp 3-phase service, a 120-208 or 120-240. Well,
like how many ops would that max with that kind of power capacity?
Well, as far as operatories go, I mean, all we're really doing with operatories is adding some receptacles, not really a lot of draw on the panel.
What draws the most?
Motors and heat sources. So
the compressor
and the vacuum.
Right.
Those are going to be large loads. Another thing, a lot of people go straight to their main breaker in the panel and they look at it and they say, oh, good, it's 100 amp 3-phase. We got lots of power. But they may not understand that the heating and air conditioning loads for that space are also coming off of that panel. And those are large draws. Heating and cooling might take up 30 to 50 amps right off the top. So now your 100 amp 3-phase service is only actually a 50 or 60 amp 3-phase service, and you still have to add all of your equipment, all of your lighting, and all of your power into that space. So it's really important not just to look at that main breaker size. You have to look at the loads that are already coming off of that panel.
Right, so you want dedicated power.
Yeah, a lot of the time, like a lot of new buildings, they'll have hydronic heating, so they're actually heated by the base building, heating and cooled by the base building. They'll have cooling towers and heat pumps throughout, and they're actually fed hot and cold water from base building to heat and cool the units. So that power actually wouldn't come off of the space. They might just have a small internal blower fan, but a lot of the time they have condensers outside or in the parkade or on the roof that are going to be drawing power for heat pumps located inside of the unit. So we'll go into this one. This one's actually a rooftop unit, so we'll show you kind of what that means.
Awesome.